Hey, what's going on, everyone? Welcome to the first episode of Clash of Creators. My name is Erik Vasquez, and you're probably wondering what exactly is Clash of Creators? Well, that's a very good question. Clash of Creators is a brand new show that we're going to be showing here on YouTube and other video podcast platforms in the future, where I sit and talk with friends that I've made through content creation about their journey in content creation, what makes them a wrestling fan, and why did they choose to do wrestling content creation. It's also a very informative, insightful show where other content creators can gain some tips on how to better enhance their content and how to better make connections with other people to grow their community. So I hope you guys enjoy it. This first episode is me sitting with my good friend JDKNonstop, all the way out in Vancouver, British Columbia. JDK does a lot of variety streaming from Final Fantasy to Apex, but mainly his thing is eFed creation using WWE 2K24 and WWE 13. So it's very interesting. It's a very insightful conversation about how to network and make natural connections and make friends, because ultimately that'll help you become a better content creator. So make sure you guys go ahead and give him a follow over on Twitch, twitch.tv/Keeley's Network. Again, that's twitch.tv/Keeley's Network. Again, he does eFed creation. He plays some Apex, maybe some Final Fantasy, maybe some Zelda, even IRL streaming from conventions and things like that. So it's a very fun, informative conversation that I think you guys will enjoy. Now, a little bit of a programming note. Unfortunately, there was some technical difficulties, so this first episode is an audio only episode, but future episodes coming for Clash of Creators will be video based, so you can see me interview these individuals and have the conversation, and it'll be a lot of fun. Again, make sure you follow JDK Nonstop over at twitch.tv/Keeley's Network. And also make sure you give this video a like, give it a comment on any tips that you may have as a content creator, and share it with your content creator friends or wrestling friends. Maybe they will find this educational as well. So make sure you share it along, and make sure you follow me, twitch.tv/Ringside Rundown, for every WWE and AEW TV program. I do live reactions, I do side commentary for the matches, I make goofy faces and bad jokes. It's a lot of fun. So make sure you guys follow me, twitch.tv/Ringside Rundown. Again, unfortunately, due to technical difficulties, this is an audio only episode, but the next episode and future episodes of Clash of Creators will be video based. So hopefully you guys enjoy it, and welcome to the first episode of Clash of Creators. What's going on, everybody? Welcome into the very first episode of the Clash of Creators show here on YouTube and probably other platforms in the future. But this is the very first episode. I'm excited. I'm here with my boy JDK Nonstop, all the way from Vancouver, British Columbia. How's it going, my boy? How is everything in your part of the world?
It's going good, man. It's going good. Chilling here on a Thursday night, and my one day off from streaming throughout the week. Chilling here to talk a lot about wrestling, talk a lot about streaming, and probably what influenced my journey to get here today. So thank you so much for having me on the episode here. I really do appreciate it, Erik. Make sure y'all go check out twitch.tv/Ringside Rundown and follow the boy if you haven't already.
Hey, thank you for the plug. You taking half my job already. I
That's
didn't
all
even need
goody.
to do a plug.
That's all goody. I got you, brother. I got you.
No problem. Well, I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule. You work full time, you stream constantly, you're constantly creating content and going out to conventions and doing a lot of IRL stuff. So I am really, really appreciative of you taking the time out of your day, especially on your off day, to come chat with me about all this stuff we got going on.
No worries, man. When you're a creator, when you're an entertainer, like you technically really don't have an off day, right? The off day is just when you just tell people just like I need to be alone. I need to focus
Yeah.
my energies and then get ready for the next 6 days ahead and stuff like that. But I'm
Yeah.
not, shout outs to Matt Cardona. I'm always ready.
There
So
you go. There you go. There you go. Well, yeah, like you said, this is a unique show. This is the first episode. And the reason I'm doing this episode is because as content creators, you and I in the wrestling space, first off, content creators, unless you're like a big content creator on the level of like a Kai Cenat or an XQC or something like that, when it comes to typical just chatting IRL stuff, you really have to get to the level of what where they're at to get noticed, because a lot of the streaming element is based around video gaming, which is none, obviously there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like when you hear streaming and content creation, most people automatically think, well, they make content based on video games and stuff like that, and where like you do that as well, but you also mix in the wrestling reaction and then all the IRL stuff. So the reason I wanted to kind of make this show is that way there can be something for other wrestling content creators and other content creators that don't necessarily just do video game content can kind of have something to go on to, because again, I want to make this sort of a thing where someone like in your position where you have over 1,000 followers, you're constantly busy making different types of content. Like you look at your Twitter bio, it's like freestyle rapper, actor, producer, content creator, writer. Like you do all of these things. So like you have the knowledge that maybe somebody coming up and wanting to create content, you can let them know like, hey, this is how you balance all of this stuff. So but before we get into all the content creating stuff, obviously we're both wrestling content creators, and this comes from wrestling content creation background. So obvious question is probably my favorite question to always ask people is, what was your very first exposure to professional wrestling, and why did it stick with you?
Oh God. My first probably exposure was like I'd have to say I don't know, maybe 4 or 5, like when I was still like a kid basically. And like my first ever memory was actually going out to my grandma's house, and both my uncles were actually watching a wrestling show. Could have been WWF for all I know. All I remember though from what I was seeing on the television was the lighting was shit, and there was two guys duking it out in the crowd, and then a table getting set up in the crowd amongst the people. And I just remember
Wow.
from like the moment seeing that, I'm just like, this shit looks cool. What cool is that, right? And I'm like, what is this all about? And I really didn't have a grasp on that, but that's kind of where like my first exposure came from, was both my uncles that were watching it at my grandma's place, and then later on in life, like I knew what WWF was, now WWE, and professional wrestling in general. You know, I grew up with the Attitude Era when I was a teenager, right? But I didn't have cable subscription when I was a kid, so it wasn't until like when I was probably like in high school. I think you'd probably say grade 8, grade 9. So I used to go hang out with some kids that would watch the WWF pay per views, and we would do like the backyard wrestling and everything. And that's kind of where I found the love for it, right? Because I've always been a theater individual. I've always loved creating art, acting, improv, all those things. And I saw like the physicality that goes hand in hand with like the storytelling and making people believe what they're seeing. It really just struck a chord with me. So it's something that stuck with me for majority of my life.
Right. And we were talking earlier and we come to the conclusion your birthday is actually next week. So happy birthday, obviously.
Yeah, thanks, man.
We're the same age. So like as a person in our age range, how do you still have that love for professional wrestling, which is a question we were asked for the podcast for the Ringside Rundown, is why are you still a die-hard wrestling fan? Why do you keep up with it? Because it is a lot.
It is. I mean, and like I will be honest too. Like I definitely, it's been like the sine wave, right? Like I've had the ups and downs of like being a professional wrestling fan, probably from like I'd say the early 2000s up until 2004, and then when I was getting into my senior year of high school, like other things were starting to come into my life, and then I
Right.
fell out of it. It's kind of funny though because it's the same time Rock and Stone Cold left the business as well there too, and just
Right.
like John Cena was actually getting in. Like I still remember watching his debut on SmackDown. I'm pretty sure I
Right.
recorded it on VHS. That's for all you new youngins watching this here. But like I kind of put it down for quite many years actually, and then I got back into it in 2010 actually, when I started doing a tech job that also was for a cable company, and I was able to watch wrestling when I was working. So funny enough, I just tuned it on, and it's one of those things that like it's like people always use the relation with a soap opera. You can walk
Mhm.
away from watching a soap opera and then just like watch one episode and you get sucked right back in, because
Right.
storytelling is always concurrent. It always has a way of letting you know what's going on, where are things headed, and what are you looking forward to next. And that was around the time where just before CM Punk dropped the infamous pipe bomb promo, and I remember watching that live as well too on cable and everything. And I thought like, okay, this guy's dope. This guy's got me to buy back in, just like I did during during the Attitude Era with like the Rocks and the Stone Colds and the Triple H's and the Undertakers, right? And I kind of kept up with watching WWE content up until like around say 2015, 2016. And that's kind of when I was started falling out because the brand really wasn't hitting me like it used to.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that was definitely a downtime during the company's time.
Right, yeah, like, I think The Shield had just debuted, and CM Punk was, like, heading on out, and I think also Punk's departure too, and, his experience as well too, like, I still remember, listening to the Colt Cabana, Art of Wrestling or whatever it was pod,
Yeah.
and, like, you know, Punk dished the whole the deets about, like, how he had the staph infection, and he was just dealing with poor management at that time, and I think for me, I was more like a Punk fan than I was a WWE fan. I've always been,
Right.
like, a fan of professional wrestling, but, you know, it was very much sports entertainment branded back then. And then I got back into it. I think when what was it when AEW debuted? I think that was in around I want to say 2018. I might be
Yeah,
mistaken on that.
2020, yeah, 20,
Yeah,
yeah, 2018 around there.
and I think I was like a lot of old school wrestling fans who really came into watching it during the Attitude Era that had kind of like fallen out of it because it'd become overly a PG program. A lot of the storytelling and the things that you would see on WWE programming just wasn't really for me, didn't really strike a chord with me or perk my interest. But AEW, I was just like, okay, let's see what's going on with this. And I remember like watching that for quite some time. Also, Punk ended up coming back into professional wrestling because of AEW. And then I think it was like, yeah, I kind of had another then falling out because I kind of got a little bit fatigued off of watching wrestling again. And then it was a couple years ago, I actually came back into it because of Twitch, where I actually realized, hey, I have professional wrestling games. I've always loved professional wrestling gaming, like SmackDown, Here Comes the Pain, and WWE 13, which I actively stream Mondays and Fridays,
Right.
twitch.tv/Keely's Network. Check me out. But like I love those games. And then I think it was because of getting back into the love of gaming there also then brought back in that renewed interest into the product, which got me to pay attention to it once again. And right now we're in the Paul Levesque era, like a lot of people say, or as Cody Rhodes says, like the Renaissance era.
Right.
And it's very much pulling back to trying to appeal to, I think, fans like you and I who were kids during the Attitude Era,
Right.
but also at the same time, like trying to make it for all ages still, but not shying away from like blood, not shying away from like curse words that slip out in promos and like, you
Mhm.
know, a good amount of like violence as well, too, because I
Right.
think that's what got us all into watching wrestling, right? The
Right.
aggression that was involved with it, the storytelling, and then like the oh my God moments and stuff, right? So
Right.
that's kind of like how my whole life has gone really with it, right? Like from the early to like the midpoint and to where I am now, where I, you know, I didn't even realize that reacting to Raw and SmackDown was really a thing until like a couple years ago. I think the pandemic really brought that in as well too.
Yeah.
And I just figured, you know what, might as well do it. It's an excuse to watch wrestling and stream at the same time. So
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I feel like the cool thing about doing the live reaction stuff with wrestling is that it is popular, but it's not super popular. Like streaming in itself and content creation is very oversaturated because everybody can do it if they put the effort into trying to do a good job with it. So everybody has the capability of doing it. Within the wrestling content creation, there are a lot of content creators that do what you and I do, and you do even more. But there's not a feeling like there's so many people doing it that I'll never make my way up the ladder, so to say, where more people can check me out and check out the content that I make because literally so many people are doing it. It's different from like regular streaming where like if you were a Fortnite streamer, you know,
Mhm.
and you played Fortnite and you created Fortnite content, well, there's literally a million other people that create Fortnite content, and it's like to try to make your way into being one of the bigger Fortnite streamers, you're going to be swimming uphill. Whereas like wrestling and reaction content, like I said, there's the big ones, you know, there's the con mans and the Sandy Zaps and the Wheezy Blondes, and they're all
Mhm. The
fantastic.
big three right there,
Yeah,
basically.
yeah, they're all absolutely fantastic. But I've never personally got the feeling like, oh, they're so big and there's so many people doing this that I'll never be able to get to that level where people know who I am and people anticipate and want to check out my content.
Yeah, I don't think you want to let stuff like that hold you back, right? Like at
Right,
the end of the day, when it comes to content creation, you really are just creating a community, and they're really there for you more than anything.
right.
It's like one of the things about being a variety streamer is that the content always changes, especially on my channel, right? It did really for like the first couple years when I got into Twitch streaming in like August 2020,
Mhm.
and now like to look from then to now, I actually have like the Mondays and the Fridays where we watch Raw and SmackDown, and then right after we have what's called an eFederation
Right,
using professional wrestling gaming with created wrestlers CAWs, and we actually set up matches, we set up cards, and we do it just like an actual pro
right.
wrestling show. And before where I am now is at the point where I am trying to run it like a weekly episodic show that has like a running storyline, that has like an actual like edits, whether that be using digital art or using in-game story mode, which WWE 13 has. 2K, please bring back creative story mode. What's wrong with you? But it's one of those things that like I also have other content as well. Like we do Apex on Tuesdays. I do games with my mods and my community on Wednesdays. Thursday is my off day, but we're now turning that into like movie nights in Discord. And then on the weekend, I just set that up for like whether it be like group gaming with other creators or the community or single player gaming or whatever I'm feeling. Really, right? It's when you want to start out being a content creator, which is the big thing nowadays, because when you and I were growing up, people wanted to be rock stars and movie stars. That
Right.
was the big thing if you
Yeah,
actually wanted to like succeed and really be in the public eye and get the fame and the fortune, right? But like I
right.
remind a lot of people, like first and foremost, before anything, you got to be doing this because you just have the love of doing it, right? People see that authenticity comes through when people are up on a camera, when they're streaming, and if you look disinterested, then you're viewers are going to tell like straight the fuck up.
Facts.
You know, there's my
Yeah.
f bomb, I guess. But
Go ahead.
but like for myself, like I just constantly remind me that like I'm having fun doing this. That's my mission statement when it comes to being on Twitch and streaming is that I have to be having fun more
Right,
so than anyone. The moment that I stop having fun with something, it's the time to pivot, right? It's the time to
right.
change up and actually move into doing something else. And really for me what kind of just keeps me going and remind myself that yes, it's a very oversaturated market, but every industry has oversaturation. I was doing hip hop music for the longest time. I've ran a battle rap league as well too, and also audio engineering from like mixing and mastering and beat making. Like all these things were completely oversaturated by the time I even got my foot in the door, or in like the early 2010s, right? And that's what kind of led to me again having to go get a job, and then that job led to me getting back into professional wrestling, and that was back in the 2010s when I was watching Punk, and he had his phenomenal run when he had like that whole year that he was the WWE champion.
Right.
And like nowadays, like what kind of like reminds myself is that one, that passion of wrestling has never left me. I still have that within my heart, within my blood, because I used to be the guy that would like host those pay-per-views. I told you that I would go over to a buddy's house, right? His parents really got choked at the fact that we were doing wrestling moves to the point that they didn't want to be the ones liable of having some kid break his neck from, don't try this at home, which,
Right,
everybody
yeah.
makes a joke about that, but we all fucking tried that at home at some point. And then I would be like having people over. So we would do backyard wrestling on a trampoline, just like how the Hardys came up. And then I remember one day that, and this is probably the same thing that I use transformative when it comes to the E-Federation and trying to increase the content, make it more palatable and a lot more fun for everybody that's viewing it. I was like, why are we doing this? But we don't have like the big thing that everybody strives for in professional wrestling, which is the belts, the
Mm.
titles. So I remember I was fortunate enough to have like materials that my parents had. My mom had like an old leather coat that she wasn't using anymore. So I cut that shit up and I made a strap of the old school Attitude Era belt. My dad,
Nice.
and my dad worked in the farming industry and everything like that, so he had like these big aluminum plates, and I took the plates and I actually cut out like the actual side panels and like the big plate on the middle of the belt, and then
Wow.
I grabbed some Sharpies and I actually drew like the design for like the old school Attitude Era belts. I had like I had not, or yeah, the one I still have is the undisputed title. You can't see it, it's on my bookshelf
Uh-uh.
here. But like yeah, I took those plates, I did the artwork on them, I took the staple gun, then I stapled them to it, and then I hammered them on the backside so it was nice and flush. I got some Velcro, I stitched the Velcro onto the actual leather straps. And I remember the first time I brought those over, or showed the boys that after I made them, they all went, "Whoa, like what the fuck?" And I was just like, "Yeah, right. Like this is what the fucking cool thing is. It. I think everybody's always wanted to be that. Any big professional wrestling fan has always had dreams of wanting to be the WWF or WWE champion or what have you, because that means you are the king of the hill. You are the
Right.
king of the castle, and you are the man. Literally, that's what Becky Lynch has basically put her whole career off of, the phrase "the man." To be, and Ric Flair said it back in the day: to be the man, you gotta beat the man. And
Exactly.
what defines the man isn't the belt. The man makes the belt. It's not the other way around, right?
Right.
But when you a kid, you doing backyard wrestling, it sure as fuck feels cool to have that strap over your shoulder, my guy.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's funny. It's like backyard wrestling gets a bad rep, and some of it may be warranted. But if you look at like some of the people that have come from a backyard wrestling background, I mean, Seth Rollins comes from a backyard wrestling
yeah,
background. The Young Bucks, CZW, like they still do. The company CZW is like my backyard. They still do tournament of death on a random farm in Delaware, because that's the only place they can do it. And I mean, it's still technically backyard, so it's like it's still a prevalent thing. And I get it. It's really kind of unsafe because nobody's trained, but you realize like a lot of those people tend to have the passion where they transition into, okay, let's get trained and let's take a real run at this. Now, you had mentioned a lot about your eFed and your creator wrestling thing that you have going on, which is really really cool because it's very expansive. It's very it's multi-layered. It's not just throwing it together. To me, the eFed thing, it was always cool, but it always seemed like a daunting task, especially if you were the one putting it together, doing all the editing and all of that stuff.
oh,
Um,
100%.
eh, from the time that you started doing the eFed stuff to where you're at now, where it's pretty consistent in your content, has the workload to make it happen become easier to put it all together?
Yes and no. It's been streamlined in some senses, right? Like when I first started doing like the content there, it was pretty much just like loading up the retro wrestling games, and I already had like my old school created wrestler dude in there, so I obviously would just load up universe mode in WWE 13 and kind of have some fun with it.
Right.
And then I ended up creating the first big CAW that I made. Actually, shout out to my homie Mining 316. His avatar that he has is based off of his content he's created within Minecraft, which is kind of like a purple guy in a suit with a red tie. So,
Okay.
and I still remember the day that I was just chilling in my Discord and I was creating him as a character, and he popped on in and he's just like, "I saw a purple man in here." I was like, "I wanted to pop in." I'm like, "That's you." And then I literally made him with the intent of then like starting to kind of make this eFed actually more as like a YouTube series. I didn't really intend for like the eFed to kind of be like based off the stream content. I was
Right.
more so thinking of like making the episodes there to kind of advertise doing like the pro wrestling content. This is before I had any idea of like what eFed really was about.
Right.
And you can check that out on my YouTube. The eFed is also the same as like the YouTube series I started called Monday Night CAW, which I kind of like it fizzled out a little bit because I started realizing that there was more passion in there actually doing it on stream. So it went from creating the wrestlers and the characters to putting them into the universe mode to making them more prevalent than the actual wrestlers that were already stocked in the game. And that's where I started to realize that there's that mix of fantasy football, fantasy hockey, but like this is what pro wrestling fans can do, especially if you're a gamer and you're on Twitch. There's so many people that do eFeds out there. But when I was doing that, I was literally just like using the universe mode and creating the wrestlers, and that's it. We would just like run through the matches. Sometimes I would skip through weeks of like the actual like Raw and SmackDown episodes just to get to the pay-per-views, because we always knew the pay-per-views were gonna like just slap more so. And then I started to realize is that like no, should try to start integrating like actual storylines with this, just like I did on the YouTube series, which came from like creating a story using the story mode within WWE 13 and actually treating it like a proper show. The big barrier that I have run into and I still run into is I am not like everyone else that uses the current game WWE 2K24.
Right.
I run it off of a retro game, which is on my PS3, which is old as fuck, which means I come into issues with like glitches or even like hours spent working on like the creative story mode within the game, and then I end up losing what I've worked on. It's happened before. Like
The whole thing?
Sometimes it depends. Like if the glitch game's out or the game glitches out and I forget to fucking save the thing, and I'm like, oh shit, it's no different than somebody working on like PowerPoint or something like that. It's like, when's
Yeah.
the last time that I saved? Oh shit, I've been working on this for 2 hours. I didn't save shit. Oh fuck me, right? So like there's definitely been times, Eric, that I've had to like go back, start over. At least I know what I need to recreate, but I have had to sacrifice like full weekends of my own time, and even just like streaming other content, or even like taking care of like responsibilities like grocery shopping, cleaning, and all
Wow.
that stuff, because I've literally had to recreate the actual storyline within the create a story mode within WW13, and then I offload record that using either Streamlabs OBS or OBS, and then I take what I record off of that, because again it's on the PS3, right? That's the easiest way to actually like
Wow.
get the bulk footage, upload that to a file transfer site, bring that over onto my iPad, and then I use a program called LumaFusion to go through and actually do all the chops and all the edits.
Wow.
So like you've come into my stream before and you've seen when I actually have like Wade Barrett,
Yeah.
which I do a pretty horrible RP of, and Mining's character, Stephen L, and we're sitting at the commentary table, right? And like I didn't start with that. I came up with that idea of like having like us being able to narrate and do the storytelling during the eFeds pay-per-views, the PLEs, right?
Right.
It's one of the things that before it was like only used really within like the storyline and everything like that, and I would just be doing a mock Michael Cole, which is just using my own voice and everything like that, to the point now where I do RP as Wade Barrett because he's in the game and it's kind of hilarious. Mining is himself because he is such a G when it comes to actually being able to narrate and give like those authentic action moments within commentating. And then it also gives like that visual as well too, when people pop into the stream and they hear us talking. Well, let's take you to the commentary table, and that's where you can actually see us, right? That has definitely become more streamlined. I know how to set those up, how to get that going really quick. So when it comes to like every pay-per-view that I do, I have to set up a brand new one. It's always a different table, different artwork, but I know what type of cuts that I need to use to actually get that loop going to pop that in. And then from there, it comes down to like what storylines are we focusing on, what's really going to happen, what things are we going to integrate within the actual PLE. And that really can be cumbersome if I again encounter glitches. Like I really just figured out a problem not too long ago with one of the created wrestlers was glitched, so it actually caused problems for me every time that I would actually go to offload or move on to the next scene. And like I mentioned, right, losing stuff and having to actually work on it. But
Yeah.
um you're going to have to do a lot of work at the start of when you're doing something to actually get to the point where you've increased efficiencies and productivities to know
Yeah.
how to actually move around those barriers that can come up, and also troubleshoot the unforeseens that can actually happen, right?
Right.
I
Yeah.
mean, I take it from also like other creators that I see, because a lot of them don't really have like a way of doing a storyline because there's no creative story in 2K24. But I got to give a shout outs to again Mining, because he does an eFed as well too, using a lot of the same characters that are in Mine, and he actually like uses the in game to create like a story. There's also like you can do certain cutscenes and stuff like that, but you get like a window that's probably like about like this big up in the corner that he then
Mm.
has to like expand upon, and he does his own edits as well too, I'd assume in similar fashions, recording with OBS or Streamlabs OBS, and then taking it into like DaVinci or any other video editing
Right.
software and cutting it up, just like no different than when you're watching a WWE program. It goes from the end of the match to the backstage commentary to the interviews to the guys getting jumped to the guys getting beat in the parking lot to the Stone Cold coming and driving over your car with like the monster truck and stuff like that, right? Like
Wow.
it's it's taken some time, man. It has, but like you find your niche when you're actually working on this stuff,
Yeah.
right? And the
Yeah.
big thing that I have to remind myself is that I am having a lot of fun doing this, so I don't mind sacrificing a whole weekend of my time. My chat understands it, my community understands it, and like I mentioned before, like there is literally when I worked on one episode, I came home on a Friday, I started editing into the night, eventually had to go to bed, woke up, continued on Saturday, had to tell my chat I got to postpone stream. I'm still working on like this banger episode for y'all. And then again, continue working on the Sunday when I was planning to do the stream. Still not done. Still got to work on it a little bit, and also do my checks and give myself a little bit of breathing room, a break, so I can come
Yeah.
back to it with renewed focus. Right. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's definitely a little bit easier now that I've gone through those trials and tribulations, we'll say.
Right. Yeah, because you had brought up that very interesting fact, which is basically the more you do it, the more you can kind of figure out what are the workarounds to increase your efficiency in your output. Because I remember trying to do my first TikTok highlight from like the streams where I, have the what's happening in the wrestling and then my reaction. The first clip was like 14 seconds and it took me hours to do. And it was simply just syncing up the audio because the way I do it is I do it. I know other content creators are like, this is the most ass backwards way. But basically what I do is I take the clip of me reacting to the content. I find the content either on YouTube or Twitter because I'm very cognizant of they're probably going to post that on social media. So
Yeah.
I can grab that clip. I basically grab the clip, sync the audio so it like syncs up. And the best way I do it now is I listen for the echo between my stream audio
Mm,
and the audio of the clip.
yeah.
And I listen for the echo. And when I know the echo's right there, I mute the audio of the clip, keep the audio from my stream highlight, and then that's how I create the clip. When I first did that, it took me hours just to do one 14-second clip. Now I can get it done within like 10 minutes, but it's just like you said, the more you do it, and especially with the editing, like you say, you kind of pick up on, okay, boom, in your mind, you're like, this is where we're going to do a cut right here, cut right here. You're even when you're streaming, your mind just kind of works that way where you're streaming, you're talking, you're interacting, but in your mind you're like, I'm going to cut here, I'm going to cut here, this is how I'm going to post this and everything like that. So
Mhm.
it's interesting because again, like I said, the eFed stuff, it's very interesting. It's very cool. I love it. It just seems like such a daunting task because I'm the
Oh,
type
it is.
I'm the type of person like I want it to go perfect. Like I want it to look like the
Same.
the closest to the actual show as possible. So
Yeah.
if I don't achieve that, I feel like I'm just like wasting my time. Which is another thing. How do you balance between doing the content creation, working full time, plus your other stuff that you do as like you said, you do freestyle battle rap, you do producing, you do improv
Well,
and
I used
acting.
to,
Well, I
like,
mean,
like, yeah, but
but how do you keep that in, because I feel like nowadays my only hobby is wrestling and doing the wrestling content creation. I don't have very much time to do anything else.
well, and it's funny you say that because that was actually like before I even got into streaming. Like I was like beat making, I was still songwriting, and really kind of focusing on making music. But I had been doing it for so long that I started to like kind of like, you know how there's a saying there, like you can fall out of love with something at
Yeah,
some point, and then you
yeah,
kind of feel like you're doing it just to be doing it, but you're not feeling motivated at the end of the day.
yeah.
That's kind of like what I hit when it came to like music, battle rap, everything. Like I still got a lot of love for the people that I met throughout that walk of life. It is definitely a big part of me that stuck with me for at least, a good 10, 15 years. I still got a good homie that I grew up with, from days of us playing with Transformers and, even just like coming up with our own storylines with Optimus Prime and Megatron and everything. Like we still get together now and then and we spit freestyles over beats and what have you. Right. But for me, it was kind of like I didn't feel like I was going anywhere.
Okay,
And I had to like kind of get away from it just for my own sanity. And when I was doing that at the time, my then roommate, Honkin' Waffles, he was streaming on Twitch. He was streaming Dead by Daylight. And I had known of Twitch, but I had not really like dipped my foot in the pool, so to speak, right? Because
gotcha.
that's the one thing I've learned since I actually came into like being a content creator, which I still think is a little bit funny to say. I don't feel like one at the end of the day. I tell people I feel like I'm an entertainer at my core, and I've always shifted between different mediums of how I entertain or provide content, right? Which
Right.
then someone reminded me is like, well, when you were doing battle rap and you were putting those up on YouTube, like, don't you feel that's content creation? I'm like, oh yeah. So it's one of those things but the passion wasn't burning in the same sense there.
Right.
So I kind of decided to put that down. Gaming was still one of my hobbies at that time. Like I think I just come off playing like Red Dead Redemption 2, and I love that story. And there was like so many great moments in there. But like when I watched my roommate playing Dead by Daylight, it seemed like it was a kind of cool concept, right? It also kind of for me felt like, well, at least I could be gaming or I could be streaming, and then I feel like I'm at least doing something productive aside from just
Yeah.
like having this as a hobby. And no knock or disrespect to anybody that like has gaming as something that they do as their release or they do in their fun time. Not everybody has to be a live streamer,
Right.
but if you have like a passion to connect with people and meet new people and share like your life experiences, that's where I think like streaming kind of goes hand in hand with you also having a gaming hobby, right? A big factor as well too is that sometimes you might play games that people have interest in watching, but they don't necessarily want to play themselves. And that's something that I've learned over the past four
Yeah.
years, right? Like not everybody wants to like get a wrestling game and like spend 3 to 4 hours like creating a wrestler's look, creating their move set, creating their entrance, and then coming up with like 4 to 5 to 6 to like where it is now. I have over 20 created wrestlers within my
Jeez.
e-federation. I've actually like maxed out the created wrestlers that I can do in WWE 13. I'm going to have to actually transition off that game to 2K14 because
Wow.
there's just more slots there that I can actually work with. I still want to invite the opportunity for people that come to the stream and join the community to use a channel point redemption, which is like call me in WWE, which is it's a pretty hefty one that they have to save up points for, which you can
Yeah.
get just from like lurking the channel. You already know this because you got a lot of channel point redeems on your channel, right?
Yeah.
But if somebody is going to like spend the time and connect with the community and show up for the streams and stuff like that, and then they want to be a part of that, well, that I feel like the responsibility is on me to also kind of give them the best foot forward I can, right?
Right. Right.
But it's one of those things that I never saw myself doing this, Eric. Like I never really thought that I would actually get to some point in my life where I'm gaming on the internet, I'm putting my face and my voice on the internet, and then I'm also sharing my creativity when it comes to like video editing, when it comes to drawing, when it comes to audio editing, sound effects, and all that stuff, right?
Yeah.
But this has given me renewed purpose. It's pulled me back to like my first loves, which I mentioned earlier in our conversations, our talks here. Like I've always been an arty guy. I've always been a drama kid. I've always been a theater kid. You'll hear that a lot from a lot of people in this creative space. This really has also allowed me to put those passions forward in a way that make people go, holy fuck. And then I get a pop out of the crowd whenever I do something like this big arc that I'm going through right now with one of my mods, Magical Booba. There was a joke going on in our Discord one day about when King Stoobs, another one of my mods, and these are also two of my good IRL homies,
Right.
there was a match during the eFed in its very early days, which was a Hell in the Cell, and Stoobs choke slam Puba right off the cell. And in WWE 13, they make such a great, spectacle of it, from the camera cuts to grabbing the throat, hoisting up, and then through the table, or even worse, just on the ground when there is no table. And Puba got choke slammed right on the ground, and we just made a joke. It's just like, God damn, you sent him to hell. Like, when Puba's going to come back, he's going to be Demon Puba. And that was like light bulb. There's something to go off of.
Yeah.
So I actually ended up like creating Demon Puba as a character, and then I made what is now like the last video release I've put out on YouTube for the Monday Night CAW series, where I basically made an hour-long episode of SmackDown, and in that episode is when Demon Puba makes his debut. And now it's kind of like it's really turned into an anime where like there's these doppelgangers of the wrestlers, and they're being led by Demon Puba and like this dark shadowy force called the Shagahod, which I took that reference from Metal Gear Solid 3, one of my favorite series of all time. And like there's just so many different little Easter eggs that I put in it as well, right? That's given me a whole new purpose. I never thought that wrestling would come back into my life that it has, but I've also been able to connect with a lot of other great individuals, right? Through doing this content.
Awesome, awesome. You had mentioned something a little while ago that I kind of wanted to touch on because I see it a lot with streamers, because to me there is a difference between like a streamer, and not that there's anything wrong with that, and a content creator. But I
Mm,
do see it a lot with streamers and with content creators that are coming into the game when they don't see the rewards and the statistical rewards that one would get if they start to blow up within content creation. It affects something that you said, like the love of it kind of just went
mhm,
away. Like you don't dislike it, it's just the love of creating it is no longer there. To me, when I first started streaming, I started an account on Twitch and I was doing the typical game streaming. Um, but there was inconsistencies within my content and my streams because I just wasn't passionate about playing video games on Twitch. Video games were kind of like a release to me. So a lot of times I play video games, I go nonverbal, which is not something you can do on Twitch and be successful. But when I started doing the wrestling stuff and what I'm doing now, it's like that passion was there, and the passion to keep going despite maybe the numbers not being where they where I wanted them to be. It was almost like, well, this is the challenge, and this is the work that you got to put in to get the numbers there. For you, like, I met you, I randomly was just searching for wrestling content creators on Twitch. No, I don't think a lot of people actually do that. I think people just see what they see on their front page and they go from there. I was actively like searching for people, and I wanted to find somebody that was like, okay, they look like they're taking this seriously, and that's when I found you. I just
Mhm.
so happened to be your 1000th follower on
Yep.
on Twitch, which was like the crazy, that never happened to me, to be able to be the person to help someone else get to a milestone of that nature.
Yeah,
Um
that was a fun 2 weeks because you probably experienced this too about how, like, the up and downs of how it goes where, like, you'll have people hit that follow button, and then you'll see, like, your numbers will go up, but you'll notice your numbers will go down as well
right.
too. It's just the nature of, like, people basically treating us like cable subscription or, like, pages in the newspaper, right? Like,
Yeah.
one day you'll come across someone, you think they're dope, it costs nothing to hit the follow button, literally, but, at the end of the day, though, too, if someone is, like, following a bunch of channels, they will then at some point decide to cull their channels out too, so they don't have this big, lengthy, long list that they have to lick, that they have to basically lick and stick through, I guess is what I was trying to say, when it comes to finding somebody to watch, right? I kind of do the same thing when it comes to like finding new people, and it can be one of the hardest things to do if you don't put yourself out there,
Right.
especially if you go into a chat and you try cracking jokes. But a lot of people have difficulty reading tone through text, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So
trust me, I know.
yeah, so, like, it's one of those things that, like, you'll try to have a conversation with somebody, and they'll be like, "What the fuck, weirdo, ban." And then next thing you know, it's just like, "Okay, that's not what I meant, but, oh, thanks for doing me a favor, I guess?" I don't know.
Yeah,
Versus just, like, having other friends in the creative space and in the community introduce you to other creators, and then, of course, what they'll normally do, and I've learned this tactic from a lot of people, is that when I have somebody come into my chat and they spend time and they start talking and trying to make a concerned effort to get to know me, I click on their link and I look and I bring up their Twitch, because more often than not, a lot of people that will actually interact with you in your Twitch streams are streamers themselves, or they're
mhm.
passionate about wanting to be streamers. And like when somebody actually comes in, they don't like lead with the whole self promo or just like, oh, we were doing a stream tonight. We had like members of the community and stuff. It's like, that's great, bud. Like you should let me. You should let me be the one that opens up this conversation, right? Like it's a big taboo thing on Twitch about
Yeah,
self promo, right? And I'm pretty sure you've heard this and
oh
know
yeah,
about this, right? Because like, yes, you want to probably let people know that you're in that creative space and stuff, but first and foremost, you got to be that people. You got to be that frog.
yeah,
You got to actually show up and just like chat and interact like you normally would with meeting anybody around there. And
right,
if somebody takes interest in you, then they will click on your link and find out. And there's a lot of times I'll click on someone's chat and they'll have like maybe 2, 3 followers. They don't have a profile picture, they don't have an about section, they don't have anything. It looks
yep,
like just a dead channel. So to me, that's a viewer. That is 100% a viewer. Versus I click on a link
right,
and they have an about section, they have a profile picture,
right,
they actually have videos, they have clips, they have all this stuff. Or sometimes they'll have a large following or they'll have a very short following.
mhm,
You can't always rely on the fact that a purple check mark is going to pop into your chat, which is like
right.
the biggest marker of a Twitch partner. But when somebody comes on in and if they start just having a regular conversation with you, more often than not, they're probably a streamer and they're either networking or they're just watching Twitch. And
Right.
and that's the beautiful thing about live streaming in general. It is not like television. You can talk to the television and the television talks back at you.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, I never
which
thought about it that way, but that's
yeah,
a very interesting way to
that
put it.
that's that's exactly why it's kind of blown up in the way where nowadays kids like want to be TikTok stars. They want to be streamers, like you mentioned, the Kai Cenats, the Mr. Beasts, all these people that are in this space, right? Because again, they have a large following of a lot of people come in. But I constantly have to remind somebody that's just starting out, like, are you focusing on the viewership? Or are you focusing on having fun?
Right,
You mentioned too about like video game playing and how like it's very tough sometimes for someone that is especially an introverted person that just wants to play the game, have fun with the game, and maybe do short narrations, which is just them speaking out loud, versus the person that can actually like talk about, I'm going to go over here and do this. Let's
mhm,
see what this
yeah,
person has to say, and then make a reference to something in pop culture or what have you, right? Because like when I first started streaming, I was streaming to 0 viewers. I was streaming to maybe 1 or 2. I think my roommate, I had 1 viewer because my roommate was lurking me. The guy that I mentioned earlier in the talks here with doing Dead by Daylight, he was the one that actually helped me get into live streaming on Twitch. Big shout outs to Honk and Waffles. He literally helped me get set up with like telling me you need to create an about section, you need to put a profile picture
Mhm.
in, and then you need to set up these scenes within OBS so you have like a starting like a stream starting soon slide, a be right back slide, because you are going to have to be a human. You're going to have to take bathroom breaks. You're going to have to go get some water, get a snack, or
Right.
even more importantly, don't be sedentary for like 3, 4 fucking hours without getting the
Mhm.
blood flow in your legs, right? Stand up
Yeah.
and walk around. And most importantly, have a slide to end your stream. So then you can take that time to still talk to your chat and you can actually go navigate your recommended,
Mhm.
find somebody who might be either streaming in the same category or you may have found or heard of them from somewhere. And then if even if you got, 3, 4, 5 viewers, still raid, go and talk to somebody, right?
Yeah.
And you might come across somebody who's just like, oh, ringside, thanks for the raid. See what's going on. Versus the person who's like, yo, Eric, ringside rundown. Thank you so much for the raid, my guy. Welcome on in. I'm
Yeah.
so and so. This is who I am, giving you
Yeah.
the deets on what I'm all about. And
Yeah.
I'll tell people to probably go check you out because you're an awesome person that came over here and decided to share your community and your time with us, right? Like there's various levels to doing content creation. Like
Right.
you said, like there's a big difference between being a streamer and being a content creator. And that's where I look at a true content creator is an entertainer, because that's what you would expect from like going to like stand up comedy, going to a rap show or a music show. You got to engage with your audience, right? If you
Right.
just expect them to like show up for like what you're doing, you are not like you are not really the Kai Cenats. You are not the Travis Scotts of the world, right? Or the Taylor Swifts. These people probably started out like doing like shows in dingy dives or like showing their music to their family and their friends before they started to cultivate a following. And it's
Right.
because they love what they do. You need to have a good amount of love in what you're doing if you actually expect anybody else to give a fuck about it, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's something that I just try to always give that advice to people that are starting out and then they're trying to get into it. Like when you go into a chat, first and foremost, don't talk about yourself. That is not your place to
Yeah.
talk.
No.
Like let the streamer ask you about that, because honestly, you pop into somebody's stream, it is about them.
Yeah.
They are the person. That's their channel. They are the broadcaster. They are the radio host. They are the talk show host. They are the graphic designer. They are the audio editor. They're the director, producer, yada yada yada. Right?
Right.
And then a good entertainer or a good content creator will start asking you questions and start to get to know you. And we do this no different than how we meet people within our day-to-day lives, right?
Right.
You go to a social circle, or you go to like an event or something like that. You go with some homies, and your homies introduce you to people that they know that you don't know yet, right? That's where
Right.
you start to build a network. You start to meet new people, and then sometimes it's the other thing too. Like you'll go out to a nightclub, you'll go out to a bar, you'll strike up a conversation either with someone who like is laughing at your jokes because they hear you within earshot, or a lady's giving you a certain look and it's an inviting one, so you can spark up a conversation that way, right? Like I made a joke the other day on stream about like how growing up we were told not to talk to strangers, but to be in this type of industry and
You
do this
got to.
stuff, you have to talk to strangers,
Yeah.
right? And you need to figure out right then and there if somebody's actually just trying to get something out of you or if they're trying to make a genuine connection.
Yeah,
And
yeah. You definitely have to be able to you have to have your radar good in terms of looking out exactly for what you say. Are they using you to get ahead for themselves, or are they genuinely wanting to make that human connection with you?
yeah,
You
like
know?
that's the most important thing, right? And that's something I can remind myself as well too. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, like I'm pretty bad though sometimes for like trying to go meet new people and talk in their chats and stuff. But that's
Yeah.
why I also try to take myself to events like TwitchCon, where
Mm,
you can actually like come across people, meet them face to face and have conversations, meet them that way, follow each other on each other's socials,
right.
and then keep up on each other's lives, and then see them post something funny in their story, and then they give you like a laugh, you give them a laugh react, and all of a sudden you get a message back saying, "Yo, what up, Keely? What up, JDK? Like, how's things? How's life treating you? What's going on?" Right? Like, it's no different than how you make those real life interactions
Yeah.
chat,
Yeah.
is what as we say.
That's the and it's interesting because like that's what I tell people too. Like you said, a big part of what we do is networking. And honestly, the easiest way to network and to get positive results out of networking is just to be genuinely interested. Genuinely interested in the person, what they do, and how they do it. Don't don't necessarily look for content that you're not going to vibe with, but because this person has such high numbers that you feel like you can get something out of it, because those people who have those high numbers have already been around the block. So they see
100%.
so they
That
see
big
you
facts.
coming. Yeah, they see you coming. Like you're like a bright neon sign that just says, "Hey, I'm just trying to get my numbers up and I'm going to see if I can do it this way." And maybe you will get some numbers out of it, but it's like it's one of those things like we see what you're doing. So like the easiest way to network is find people that you'd be interested in and take an interest in them and what they do and how they do it, and build that human connection, because at the end of the day humans love talking about themselves. Like you said, you go into somebody's Twitch channel, that's their Twitch. It's all about them. It is their show.
Yep.
You know, so humans have the inherent need to always want to talk about themselves. So once they see that, oh, this person is genuinely interested in what I'm doing, it's like you said, somebody's interested in what you're doing and they're being genuine about it, you go check them out and you see what they're all about. And
Yep.
and honestly, like even if you don't vibe with their content, you don't have to follow them. You don't have
Yeah.
to follow them. It's completely up to you. So I constantly, you see networking and you see all these things like, oh, you gotta put together a media kit, you gotta be in these streams, you gotta be posting 4 or 5 times a day, you got, and it's honestly, it all boils down to, if you really truly want to network, find people that you would vibe with. If you find someone that makes content that you vibe with, start the conversation that way. As long as you see a genuine interest, they're gonna want to check you out. And if not, you move on and then you go on and talk to somebody else. That's it's I think we put a lot of times we put too much stock into things like, oh, we have to network a certain way, we have to stream a certain way, we have to talk a certain way, our YouTube editing has to be a certain way, you know. And again, if you focus too much on that stuff, you lose the passion of why you do it in the first place. That
100%.
that is the reason why, because you look at my numbers, my numbers aren't through the roof blowing people away or anything like that. And a lot of people would look at that and go, well, why do you keep going? Like because it's just like, when it comes to the wrestling and the making the content centered around wrestling, I always tell people my goal is not to be a big time streamer on Twitch. Like I'm not trying to be the Kai Cenat of wrestling content creation. I'm simply using the content creation that I do on Twitch to show off my personality, my passion, and my knowledge. So that way, a company like WWE or a company like AEW, which for some fucking reason I have no understanding why they haven't jumped on the streamer content creation bandwagon in terms of using people like Sandy Zap and Wheezy Blonde and Mini Portable and all these big fantastic streamers, that is still technically like a new medium in
Mhm.
entertainment that you can use to benefit your product, and they still haven't done so. But my hope, and the reason I do this, is to mainly try to see if I can, if somebody sees a clip of me, they know my face, they know I exist, you know. So maybe I can get in the door, and WWE would use me in the sense of content creation, or AEW or something like that. So there's like varying degrees, but the passion has to be there. The passion has to be there for, in order to get what you're trying to get out of content creation.
Yeah, did you watch, like, that, whole behind the curtain WrestleMania 40
Yeah,
special that they put out?
yeah,
Yeah. That was probably the first time that I've actually seen WWE use, like, on their official programming stuff, like, clips from content creators
yeah,
doing reactions when the whole, like, Cody Rock Roman thing was going down after the Rumble, and, like, WWE saying, "Oh, we have this opportunity to do Rock versus Roman, so, let's just let Cody drop his chance after winning the Rumble to The Rock
right.
to have that go down." But nobody asked for that. Nobody wanted that shit. And, I still remember watching that. I think you could see like Wheezy, Sandy Zap, Comment, like they are all in there with some other creators as well too that I had never heard of.
Yeah,
And I think it's something that maybe WWE would probably start navigating and tilting towards as the time goes on, because again, like this is free journalism. at the end of the day,
Yeah.
these individuals that are actually making things. And then on the flip side as well too, you take a look at like someone like Sandy Zap, who just had his TikTok clapped up for
Yeah.
using the actual video content that's still owned by WWE. They very much still protect their IP
Mhm.
and their copyrights, and I think that's kind of like there's a happy medium in between
Right.
like for example, your short with like Lola Vice getting hit in the brick and then doing the cut-in with Debo from Friday. I think I watched that shit like 15, 20 times, my guy. Like I laugh my ass off at that edit because it's just so good. It's just so good. That stuff right there, I think that stuff they definitely want to be more lenient on versus like individuals who are actually like restreaming with the video
Right.
episodes of Raw, SmackDown,
Right.
Crown Jewel, Survivor Series. Like, you know, that's the big no-no out of the thing. The
Right.
fact that they don't actively go after content creators to issue copyright claims just based on audio alone is pretty magnificent when you
Yeah.
think about it, right?
If they did, I'd be clapped. It'd be oh,
We all would be, brother.
it'd
Let's be
be
honest. That warning that you get on Twitch from saying is just like you have three strikes to be able,
I look
and
at
then
that every so once. Still at zero, baby. We're still good, you know.
and if you look at it in the creating space, like this does impact like creators outside of like the IWC when it comes to like individuals who make content based off Nintendo games. Nintendo is one of the biggest litigious companies around the world. I've seen them go after creators like Point Crow, who is a big streamer for modding like Breath of the Wild and then doing these different challenges. And at one point, they decided to like hit him with two strikes.
Mm,
One strike was against three videos, and then there was a separate strike against one video. So that right there put him almost on the third strike, which is where you were completely demonetized. You were banned off the platform. You were
Jesus.
unable to actually get back on there and continue to do it. And for these people, like, you know, I'm pretty sure you and I have like full time jobs that like still keep the roofs over our heads and the food's in our belly
Right.
and stuff like that. So if something like that happened tomorrow, it is what it is. I'll go to kick, but you know, no shots against kick, but it's honestly, it honestly doesn't look that great as a platform compared to like YouTube. But that's the thing. Someone who is a YouTuber, like, where are you to go if you are banned off of the biggest video platform in the world? I will
Right.
argue that to my dying day because very much how I feel Twitch is the place to go if you do want to be a live streamer and you do want to get into streaming. You can definitely try streaming on YouTube. You can go to Kick if you want to, I guess, or you could go on Rumble. But like these places are not going to bring to you a fostering community with the ability to quickly monetize and then actually just interact with individuals on a chat platform that is leaps and bounds above anywhere else.
Right.
Versus looking at video content, YouTube is the leader. YouTube will always be the leader.
Right.
And I don't see anybody else trying to get a dog in that fight on any given day. That's why you have creators like the Mr. Beast out there, or even in like the IWC community that like they have their foundations based on putting out weekly videos that is probably started from them not having anyone paying attention to them to now they can easily get into like the tens, the 20s, the hundreds of thousands of views depending on how good the content is. You look at Sandy's app, for example, who was mentioned already there, right? He does the thing where he's like, submit me your hot takes
Right.
from like Raw or from SmackDown, and then he literally like takes that and it's pretty much React content, but also community driven because
Right.
like he says, like, disclaimer, your name may be in the video and everything like that. So if I roast you, don't get pissy. So he even though his TikTok is gone now, he did build himself up on platforms like YouTube by doing that off stream
Mhm.
content. He still streams on Twitch, and he does a lot more than just the actual like. I'd call him probably more of a reactor than anything. I don't think I've ever seen him do any like gaming streams.
Right.
It's either him watching wrestling content, which is predominantly WWE because he's been clapped up by AEW before, or like reacting to weird ass shit on YouTube, like the Chris Chan documentary, which I was actually getting sucked into a couple weeks back.
Oh, no.
Before I even actually like got into the mode of like actually saying, oh, maybe I should give this a try, right? And
Mm,
that's honestly where the influence came to it for me, right? And then again, I'm very thankful that I did that because had I not started doing that, probably would not have actually met you. Probably would not be here talking to you today about like live streaming, wrestling, content creation, all those beautiful things that like really does impact your walk of life. I had I know I'm a really bad yapper as well too, but
yeah,
like
you're
you
good,
have to
man.
you have to put yourself in different social settings and situations to actually meet new people and take on new experiences. If you ever find yourself sitting alone at home and you're like thinking, well, what can I do to actually like get out there and do something different? Just get the fuck out there and do something different. That's all I can say, really, right? If you see other people doing it, then for sure give it a go on yourself. That's also a big
Yeah,
part of live streaming, is that it's like the monkey see monkey do. So like, if you take something from someone, then someone starts to take something from you. It's basically a translation factor. But mentioning earlier about oversaturation, right? Not everybody can get on front in front of a camera. Not everybody can be talking on a microphone, reading chat at the exact same time, browsing through different tabs on Google Chrome or whatever you use if you're an Opera fan, or hope to God you don't use Microsoft Edge. The
yeah,
fuck's wrong with you? But like that's the thing, right? Like also kind of making making not the content, but like making comedy, having serious conversations, giving your point of view and your perspective on something,
right,
and also letting people know at the end of the day, it's just my fucking opinion.
right,
My opinion is probably different, is definitely different from everybody else's opinion on
yeah,
something. And I might also just be talking out my ass half the time.
yeah,
Sometimes I might need to fact check it. Sometimes somebody in chat might need to fact check it. And you
yeah.
can't just go from the position of saying, oh, you shouldn't be telling me that I'm wrong. I'm the streamer. Fuck yourself. Like if you do that, you're doing yourself a disservice. Even if you look it up and you take the few moments to actually fact check it, it's like, oh, okay, no, this chatter is right. Thank you so much for educating me on that, right?
Yeah,
But then there's also the chatters that come in and be like, "You suck," and just like, oh, "Okay, 60-second
yeah.
timeout, peace." But
Yeah, that's the one thing I've learned, because thankfully I don't have much experience with trolls and things like that. I've had a couple instances, but like the main thing I've learned is that it's all attention based, like they're just trying to get attention out of you. So
oh yeah,
as soon as you shut that down, like as soon as I shut it down, like they don't get the satisfaction that they're looking for. They're just looking for a reaction. They don't care if it's a negative reaction. They don't even care if you insult their mother or anything like that. They just want that reaction. So as soon as you don't give them that reaction and you just hit that ban button and they get nothing, it kind of eats away at them, because
yeah.
either way they get the satisfaction that lives for like 2 seconds and they go back to their miserable lives as trolls, or they don't get the satisfaction and they have to go try to do it with someone else. It's a constant sort of unending cycle of self trauma, I feel like, with trolls. So like my best advice is what everybody else says, and just shut it down as soon as it happens, you know.
If it's if it's something that's impacting you negatively and it's taking away from you creating the content and talking and interacting with the community that you have, then like definitely leverage those tools that you have at your disposal, especially on Twitch, right?
Right,
I mean, there's also a fine line between hitting the ban button and then somebody wanting to just be a pet, which is where they come in and they try to be a nuisance and everything. So then you basically kind of counter troll at the same time.
right,
So it's one of those things that like I always try to keep top of mind is like, can I actually just like move on and ignore this person, or do I give them the time of day and told them that I fucked their mother last night, or do I like just let my mods know, like especially if they come in and they're basically saying like very derogatory, demeaning phrases, whether it be rooted within racism or misogyny, or just like outlandish speech. Like again, like there's tools to prevent that without even having to worry about
right,
it. Like
yeah,
leverage the use of auto mod, leverage the use of banning specific terms from even being
yep.
said in your chat, and also just if you really want to make it so trolls can't really like get that reaction that they want out of you, Twitch even has a feature where if you ban somebody, you can turn it on so they can't even view your stream anymore.
Right, yeah,
um,
yeah, I remember the olden days where that wasn't the case, where they could
no, you would
you could still
they'd
see the stream, but not chat.
Yeah, and if anybody is really trying to be like an egregious troll, they're just going to make another account right away and then come back into your chat and continue on with the same behaviors, right? And like
Yeah.
you mentioned earlier, like about like networking with other creators, and like what I feel also too, what a lot of people fall into, like the follow for follow thing, even though you don't necessarily have to follow every single person, right? Like
Yeah.
check somebody's content out and consider it. Like, would you like subscribe to every single channel on a cable package? And like go broke doing so? Fuck no, you wouldn't. You would make sure that you get like your primetime television that you like to watch, your HBOs, shouts to Sopranos, like yeah, and
Hey!
you and I broke down on a lot of that stuff, right? And again,
Yeah.
it's things like that with shared interests is where you actually start to have foundations that lead to making friends, lead to also making colleagues, which you could consider when it comes to live streamers and such like that. But like a viewer is much different. A viewer can either have something going on in their life, which is the reason why they're speaking the way that they're speaking. There is also the hotbed of course, individuals that have mental health issues. There's also the hotbed of jealousy, which
Mhm.
I find is like a real big thing that unfortunately can happen, where somebody starts to connect with your community and they think you're awesome, and then you can quickly see that they're just wanting to try to use you to kind of put themselves more up on a pedestal,
Right.
or they start to feel some type of way because they can't do it the way that you do it. They don't have the technology, the tools, the public speaking skills, the creative mindset. There's a lot of stuff, right? Like, I'm just me. I do what I do, and if I affect somebody in that way, that's not on me. That's on them. That's something that they got to figure out, right? I constantly have this conversation with so many creators that jealousy woes are a motherfucker,
Yeah.
because you can literally meet somebody in this creative space and they can act like they're your fucking best friend and be hyper connective and connected. And I've met so many individuals now where I kind of like, I taper off on that, or I keep a big heavy mindset on that, because if they're trying to be hyper connected right at the start, they will then probably turn into one of your biggest haters somewhere down the
Oh,
line,
okay, yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because again, that's the thing. What happens, like jealousy woes, it does affect a lot of people, and they may not get what they want out of the interaction with you, and then instead of actually like trying to have a normalized conversation and communicate their feelings, they just take their frustrations out on saying you're trash, going around to other chats, and then start saying outlandish stuff or flat out lying about what you are, who you are. And you know as well as I do, Eric, like a person that listens to someone like that and they don't do the research for themselves or hear the other side of the story from the other end, I think that's a disservice. That's something that happens in life as well too. I'm pretty sure you and I have both had those backgrounds where
Yeah.
we've had to deal with like people going around and either saying that we did something that we didn't do,
Yep.
or saying that we believe something or we think about something in a way which is completely untrue. And then of
Mhm.
course you have to play damage control. But what I tell people is, it's like, if you want to believe some horrible shit somebody's saying about me, you fucking go do that, because that tells me at the end of the day where your mindset is and what you're willing to do to actually find the truth in the matter or hear both sides of the story, right? Like there's the your truth, my truth, and the crow's nest, and nobody can actually have that point of view from a God perspective other than some deity that people put praise into, right?
Yeah.
So treat people how you want to be treated, but there's like, that's the golden rule, and then the platinum rule: treat other people how they want to be treated. So
Oh.
if somebody wants to actually be like an egregious piece of shit, cool, I fucked your mom last night, you could call me dad, motherfucker.
I
Like
love
that's
it.
you get that from so many creators, right? Like I'm not gonna lie too, like I'm a pretty well, I used to be pretty big Hassan Abi head, and
Okay.
that's something that he always talks to about when he gets like idiots that come into his chat and start being just flying off the handle at anything and everything, especially for him being a big political commentator.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's just like people just kind of will have to vocalize their frustration sometimes, and then they'll come right back and realize that they were probably being a little too full tilt, or their head or their mind was in the right space, and everybody will usually ask for forgiveness or they'll move on. There's only two ways of actually looking at it.
Yeah, yeah. All right, so like the last little bit is something that I kind of wanted to pick your brain about because again, we're very very close in age, and when it comes to content creation and streaming, it is for all ages, but the sort of like median age range for like the typical content creator is like early to mid 20s. We you and I we're older. We're in a
Yeah.
we're in a space that is mostly dominated by young adults who are in between that. Okay, I'm no longer in high school, maybe college didn't work out, but I'm in this gap where I can really do something. And a lot of times those younger individuals, they succeed, and this is not a sort of thing where like, oh, I'm so mad because they're so young and I'm so old. My question is, how in a space that is dominated by individuals that are younger than us, that maybe because they're so young, they're able to connect with a larger audience than you and I because we have real shit going on, like real responsibilities. And like, like it wasn't you, but it was like the other day, uh, we're talking and chatting, and me and somebody else were just talking about how like our back hurts and we have like random body pains, and this is what happens when you get to this stage of your 30s where you're like almost in your 40s and like random thing. And to me, it just like it like daunted on me like this is such a weird conversation to have on Twitch because like other people are talking about like going to this con and going to this TwitchCon after party or something like that, or like hanging out with friends, and we're over here talking about, man, I really need to get like a heating pad or something for my back because I slept wrong. So it's like,
Need that icy hot.
yeah, yeah. So like, do you ever? Because I'm very self conscious of the fact that I am older in this space. Do you ever get that way where like you're like, damn, these kids, like like,
I mean, yes and no. I mean, I think I got what's called unk status,
yeah,
right? Like, it's like being old enough to have gone through a lot of stupid shit in my younger years, but also like very much a kid at heart, child at heart.
right.
And I like what I like. I think most millennials as well too. We put a lot of stock in the things that we grew up with, and those things are still very much prominent in this day and age. A lot of the video game series that I played when I was the age that Zoomers are now, they're all being remade. It's like when I was growing up and my dad would be like, "Oh, I remember that movie when I was a kid." And it's just like, "Really? It's that old?" And it's just like, "Yeah, because it's a great story. Great stories generally do get retold." Um, yeah, I feel the cringe a lot of times, right? Like it's something that I've definitely had to get past. I still have to work past it. I mean, I'm the guy that dresses up like Super Mario and goes to TwitchCon and walks around the convention floor like the big ass fucking plumber. And then like people actually find out like, "Oh, I didn't realize you were this old." Like most people kind of guess my age around 28. And I think that's why a big running meme about creators in this space here, it's kind of like, "Oh, I'm going on my 13th, 28th birthday." Right? I mean, you get to a point where like aging impacts us all differently,
Right.
right? There's definitely people that are your and my age, and they do not look like they don't even look like they're in their older 30s. They look like they're in their early 50s, right? I have friends that have kids, and I can see what that has done just for the sheer fact that they are taking care of a human. So they're probably shortening themselves on sleep. They're probably not getting the same diet and exercise routine that they could because they just don't have the time. They are nurturing a life. They are bringing up a young mind as an individual that hopefully one day will like move on to do great things with their lives, whether that be becoming like the next Kai Cenat or becoming like the next president of the United States. That
Yeah.
there's levels to this shit, right? What really kind of did it for me was I think it was back in 2019, and I had an experience that kind of changed me in the sense that I realized that life is very short, and as long as you're not hurting anyone or harming anyone or going outwardly in this life to affect somebody in a negative way, what's stopping you from having fun? Like there's like 80-year-old 90-year-old EDM DJs that play at like big festivals and such that again like predominantly the younger generation, because they got the cell structure for it, are still full on involved with. But the person that's actually at that age taking that on probably realizes that I'm still here, I'm still kicking, I still got time. So what's stopping me? I guess I'm the one that's stopping me.
Yeah.
I've had so many people tell me too, like, is this like, if I didn't watch you go out there and do these things and just like have fun and get past all the negativity and all the people calling you cringe and everything like that, I probably would never have tried doing this thing to myself. And I'm like, that's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
because you could die tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's the true factor of this life, right?
Yeah.
I've seen people chase dreams and chase goals, and they're still chasing those same dreams and those same goals, but it feels like they're on a treadmill because they're running in place. And for myself, like I talked to you earlier about when I was really heavily focused on like music and battle rap, I felt like I was running in place at that point, right? And it'd be more acceptable for me to still be chasing, the dream of like being a recording artist and making music or like doing productions and beat making for like everyone from like the big names to like little Jimmy who's got $60 that he can only spend on a beat type thing. Like, I'll never say never when it comes to that type of stuff. Maybe I will go back to it at some fashion in some sense, but for myself, I've always been the person that has, if I had the means of getting my hands on a sewing kit, getting my hands on proper art with, we never had 3D printing when you and I were growing up.
Right.
Kids nowadays are very, should be very thankful for that because you can use that to create awesome cosplays. And I've always thought it'd be kind of cool to like dress up and, maybe not RP as the character, but at least have fun dressing up as said character and then going to conventions and stuff. And you can just see what it does for other people as well, too. I've literally like, I've literally gone to an anime convention where I was dressed up as Mario, and I was walking from the parking lot right across from where the convention center was, and there was a dad with his kid there, and they were just like, "Oh, Mario, can we take a picture with you?" And then like I ended up taking a picture with this guy's son, and he like stuffed like two $5 bills in my pocket the whole time, and I'm just like, okay, kind of weird, but whatever. I'll take it on. I mean, think about a person who does take on being a clown professionally.
Mm,
When it comes to being a content creator, I think you're working within that same creative space, right?
right.
You're not necessarily wanting to focus on the aspects of you dressing up in the makeup and putting on like the big puffy nose and the multicolored suit. You're more so thinking about like how can I make somebody else's day better? How can I ease somebody else's day and make them laugh, make them feel good, make them feel warm and gooey inside. Like that is for me is the bigger reward than having to like assess the fact that people of my age, some of the people that I grew up with, they're now married with like kids and have a house, and they work in a fucking corporate job that I'm pretty sure they might hate for the most part,
Yeah.
right? Or they're going up and they're working in oil fields or way up north and stuff like that, and they're putting in like maybe 26 days of work, and then they're getting like 4 or 5 days to themselves in a month. And I have a really good balance that I'm thankful for between like my actual job that I do, where I am very connected with people and helping out people, talking to new people. And then I get to come home and I get to be on Twitch and I get to be my wacky, goofy self, which I've always been.
Man.
Right. So for me, it's like until the day comes that I start seeing the wrinkles sag on my face, that I start having like the old man voice, I can't get out of bed properly. And Eric, you got my Metamucil. Oh, your grandpa needs his pills. Like we're aging a lot slower than our parents' generation did.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
for me, if I consider the fact that like, oh, you're 40, your life is over, GG's, it's very funny for the Zoomers to say that when I'm just like, you little shits are not going to see retirement until you're into your hundreds. Do you realize that? Right? So like if I'm going to be here for a lot longer than I thought I would growing up, what's stopping me from having fun no different than I was in my 20s, right?
Yeah.
Like you bring up back pain. I definitely had back pain like the other day when I was just like, "Oh god, this fucking sucks," but thankfully it's not bugging me anymore. But that's the thing. As long as I still have my mobility, as long as I still have my health, and I've already got to that point where my frontal lobe has fully formed like it did fucking 10, 15 years ago in my mid 20s and stuff like that, I should be having fun, right?
Yeah.
I'd rather be doing this cringe shit than going out and like drinking and smoking and getting involved into other stuff that I feel is just really going to set you back later on in life and probably actually add to the aging process a lot faster
Yeah.
than not, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, man,
Yeah.
do what you want to do. Life's too short to fucking sweat the small shit.
Well, that's funny because my next and sort of final question before we wrap this up was I wanted to do something different. So I wanted to see if you, which you've been doing throughout this entire episode, dropping nuggets of wisdom, but I wanted to see if you can drop a nugget of wisdom that was shared to you that you kind of carry throughout your life, and a nugget of wisdom coming from yourself that you can drop on anybody that's watching this video, that can kind of, whether it be for content creation or just life in general, something that you take with you that was said to you by someone else and something you can bestow upon us.
That's a really good question, right? Because like I pull from many different individuals, right? I think the biggest like wisdom that I can probably say from myself is to just really be yourself. Don't try to like fit the mold or the cookie cutter image of what you think someone wants you to be, because you are just changing away from who you are, right? If you talk about like your actual passions, the things that you like in life, you are going to meet your people, and that's essentially the most important advice I can give to a content creator is to be yourself in content creation. Because if you find yourself playing a game just because you think it's going to get you the views that a Kai Cenat is getting, you will lose. If you start getting involved on like doing wrestling reacts because you heard that wrestling reactions are popping off on TikTok and YouTube, but you have no fucking investment into the actual product or don't even give a fuck about how the storylines make you feel emotionally, you will lose, right? One of those things that like for myself, I constantly have to remind myself it's okay to be myself. I am not going to be everybody's cup of tea, right?
Right.
I'm going to either make people love me or hate me. And if I've done that, then I have done my due diligence at the end of the day. The worst thing that you can strive for is a neutral reaction as somebody, because then that means they don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know,
that's true.
more, and everybody wants to be liked, but you should not worry about everybody liking you, because then you're going back to what I said. You're trying to fit the mold of what you think people want you to be, and that is going to take away from you meeting your people, meeting your tribe, forming those connections, and being a real fucking human at the end of the day, man.
Nice.
Like it is tough to be out there and try to meet someone, and then all of a sudden realizing that there's traits that they don't like about you. And it is true that you should work on yourself, you should make improvements in
Yeah,
yourself, and do the work when necessary, whether it be for your own health, your own creativity, or your mindset and outlook on life, to avoid things that come at us all sideways, whether that be depression, or doubt, self-doubt, or just thinking that we're not good enough. Like, you get, if you get stuck in those pits, then definitely seek help from someone that can let you know that it's not all bad at the end of the day. Wisdom that was probably shared with me, I think, from someone else, I would probably have to say came from like a lot of my friends, because they reinforced for me that, doing what you do is the reason that we like you. Doing what you do is the reason that we tune into your Twitch streams, that we hang out with you and chat, we play games with you, and a lot more, right? If you were just trying to do something just for the sake of doing it, there's no authenticity behind that, right? It's very tough for me to kind of find like something that someone said to me right off the top right now, because I haven't put a lot of thought into this, and that's why I'm trying to be very abroad with that statement.
I dropped
But
it on you. I dropped it on
no, you sure did. You
you.
got me. But like, I'll share with you probably one of the words of wisdom that I heard most recently, considering it's on that wrestling tip, which is really what's brought us here today. Is when I was watching the Vince McMahon documentary that just dropped on Netflix, and Paul Levesque talks about, how people say professional wrestling is fake. That professional wrestling is like, oh, it's just a soap opera. It's all made up. How can you like that shit? And he said something that no one has actually ever said to me ever in my life. Professional wrestling fans are smart. You got to be very smart to find entertainment in something that you know is scripted, and you know that this is not real at the end of the day. This is a work. This is a dance. This is no different than Cirque du Soleil. These guys are athletes. They are getting in the gym. They are training. They also have the worst training regimen because they are constantly traveling.
Right,
They do not have the means of like being like The Rock, clanging and banging, whether it be 4 a.m. or
right.
1 a.m. in like a private gym, whether that be in his own home, hotel that he's staying at, movie set that he's working on. A lot of these people, especially in the indie circuit, they're getting in cars because they don't have the money to actually take a flight. They're moving to a city. They're having to book their own hotel. They're hopefully that they can get a hotel that has an okay gym, or they can go to a gym that maybe like a nationwide establishment where they can actually do their training, keep up with their physical acumen, and then they're having to go and perform in front of people, not just on the mic, but also physically as well too. The storytelling and the art of wrestling is like one of the biggest things for me, because to be able to do springboards off of the ropes, off the turnbuckle, crash through tables, take a chair shot to the back, all these things have to hurt at the end of the
Yeah.
day, which is always why people have said like, "Oh, wrestling's fake." If you think it's so fucking fake, take a chair shot to the head, stupid.
I taken one of
And
those chairs out there. It's like I used to think like because they would lift the chair and they would do it with ease. Those chairs are fucking heavy.
no, same thing. Just like the person that wants to be like, a swordsman and something like that. Like you see, I got like the fucking master sword up on my
Yeah, I
wall
see
behind me and
it.
shit. I can't swing that shit with one arm to save my fucking life, bro. Like it is heavy as fuck. That's made out of real steel, right? Real glass. Carry me a river.
Yeah.
But yeah. But no, man. Like I think the biggest advice that I took out of watching that is just like, Triple H is right. Paul Levesque is right that to be a professional wrestling fan, you are buying into the fact that I am looking for and seeking an emotional response out of this. I want it to make me feel an emotion. I want it to make me feel something, because that's where the believability comes from it. Even though I know at the end of the day, it's no different than reading a fiction novel, it's no different than watching a Hollywood movie. All these are made up, make believe, fantasy, and that is what takes us out of the existential dread of being a human.
Mm.
You are going to be born, you are going to live, and you are going to die. And whatever you do in between is going to cement your legacy on this life, whether that's something that's talked about for the next 10 years, 20 years, 100 years, 1,000 years.
There's the
I'm
there's the
pretty sure.
wisdom right there.
I'm pretty sure that like people are still going to be talking about Tupac and Biggie until the cows come home, like long after you and I are turned to dust thrown in a river or an ocean somewhere, my guy, right? And like if you really want to cement your legacy in this life, try to find something that is going to laminate yourself within those annals of time. That is why I have been always infatuated with the fact that you could be a WWF WWE champion and you are forever noted in the book as like way back in the day having that title, right?
Right.
You're always going to pull back to legends like Bruno San Martino. You're always going to remember Roman Reigns was 1,316 days as the WWE champion in a time where WWE had to shift how it was doing its content from filling out arenas to actually having to do stuff in house and still meet the contractual obligations they had with USA and Fox.
Right.
Just because the global pandemic comes out doesn't give you a reason to just stop doing your television show. Maybe it gives you a reason to no longer have to do your live shows, but the fucking networks don't care at the end of the day,
Right.
right? You still got to go to work. You still got to do the work. And to actually get somewhere in this lifetime, you got to love the work that you do, and you got to enjoy the process, man. Because the only way that you make progress is through process. And if you don't do process, then you don't see progress.
All right.
So many people get frustrated with that. So when he said the whole thing about like professional wrestling fans are like actually pretty smart individuals, that also made me think about the levels of individuals that I've met that enjoy professional wrestling, man. I mean, think about what you and I do. It's not easy to have to be your own tech support analyst when it comes to going live, choosing a microphone to use, getting a proper camera, sitting in a proper comfy chair that can keep your ass here for 18 hours. Because, yeah, I do, like you mentioned, I do the video game streaming and I can do DGen hours a lot of times when I do. I look at doing live streaming as my second job.
Wow.
I don't look at this as like my having I have fun with it, but it's like I don't look at it as just like getting on there and just playing a game and not having to worry about interacting with chat.
Yeah.
I give this the same focus I would anything in this life that I would want to see myself doing until my dying day and not needing to retire ever. Because again, I'm like very much, and this is a very poor reference to use, but in that same documentary, Vince McMahon is a workaholic.
Yeah.
He's not a guy that can just sit at home and watch television.
Yeah.
And I've been that light and I've had that life. And now that I'm doing this where I work 8 hours a day for the job that I have, I come home, I take a couple hours to eat something, plan out my content, get my shit set up, and then I usually go for like 6 to 8 hours, and then I'm fighting to get like at least like 4 to 5 hours of sleep before I got to go back and do it the next day. And then on the weekends I usually sleep in and get my 12 to 13 hours of sleep. Maybe that's not healthy, but that's what I do.
Yeah.
And I love doing it. Until the time happens that this thing called live streaming is no longer fun, I'll probably pivot on to doing something else. But I don't see that happening yet. I'm having the time of my life since I've been doing this.
That's what counts, man. That's what counts. And you definitely dropped definitely a bunch of wisdom on us there. So don't even sweat it. Well, before we get out of here, you gotta let people know where they can find you. All of the places, not just Twitch, but you're all across the board because that is what's important when you're a content creator. You can't just stay on one platform and expect to blow up everywhere else. You gotta branch out and do other things. So where can they find more JDK content, more content from Keely's network?
I mean, the primary place that you can find me is live on twitch.tv/Keely's Network, KEELYSNETWRK. I basically stream almost about anywhere from 5 to 6 days a week. I just don't stream on Thursdays. It's my one day off. And I usually go live on Twitch sometime around or before 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can also find me on my other social platforms through my musical alias, my nickname that I still hold, even though I got a different name on Twitch, which is JDKNonstop. I'm on YouTube. I am on Instagram. I'm on Twitter as well too. So at JDK Nonstop, you'll probably find a lot of interesting things from my walk of life, whether that be freestyle rapping, whether that be the odd musical joint or two that I've dropped, maybe some cringe rap battles, maybe some not so cringe rap battles, maybe some rap battles saying some things that are not so PC nowadays. The world is a lot different. I mean, one of my homies, his name is Junk, and he's a rapper who is literally the same age as me, same day, same year.
Wow.
And he actually, when I first met him, he was hosting this thing called Strictly Cypher in Vancouver, which was like a meetup that was on Thursdays for local rappers to go to and like test their freestyle ability in what's called a cipher.
Mhm.
So basically, you put on a beat and then you like kick like a verse. It could be anywhere from like a 16 to like just going freestyling off the top for as long as you can, and then you would pass it along to the next person, usually like within a circle, right? when I first met him, he was doing construction work, he was doing odd jobs, but he was focused on his music and his passion. He's now got to the point where he's doing music full time.
Nice.
Like you can actually check him out on Spotify, Apple Music, and everything like that.
Shout
And
out to him.
he's yeah, no, he's definitely a solid human. And he mentioned, the whole reason I'm bringing him up is because he mentioned not too long ago about, there's some things that he said in previous works that he's not too proud of nowadays, right? But there's truth in it, and it's what was going on at the time.
Mm,
And he could be one of those people that wants to clean stuff off the internet and try to do like the whole clean slate thing. But
mhm.
like, where are you showing the growth?
Right,
Right?
yeah, yeah,
You should never, pull up something from 2009 or 2015 or 2001 and like judge somebody based on that. I think everybody does have a chance to go through a form of rehabilitation. That's
right,
something that I always hear Hassan Abi say. If you're accountable to the mistakes that you've made, you try to learn and adapt and be better from it, then that shows growth. That
right,
shows taking wisdom through experience, right?
yeah,
Someone that wants to judge you based on something you said in 2015 or 2009 when the world was completely two different forms of existence at that point is stupid,
right,
right? You should take the now as the most important thing, right?
mm,
What somebody says in 2024 going into 2025, when we have seen a lot of things change. And even now, when you watch older media like on Disney Plus, it gives you the content warning saying the world was a much different place
yeah,
when this dialogue was being used.
yeah,
I was watching Idle Hands actually in my Discord last week, and like the R word comes up in there or the F word comes up in there,
yeah,
and that's what like typical stoner comedies were saying back in the day because they didn't realize how much it was like marginalizing specific
right,
individuals and actually being degrading and derogatory. It is now.
right,
We've learned that as society. We've moved past that and
right.
everything. Sorry, I should be giving my shout outs and my plugs, but I'm still trying to drop wisdom
No,
on
it's
your
cool.
pod here.
It's cool.
But
It's cool because
yeah, no.
no, because
Go
I
ahead,
was
sir.
just gonna say you bring up a good point because I've always said that we as a society kind of take maturity and think that there's a glass ceiling that we can't break when it comes like once you hit 18 or once you hit
The zenith,
yeah,
yeah.
once you hit 21 or once you hit a certain age, there's no maturity, there's no room for growth. Like you can't make those same immature mistakes. And I feel like we as a society don't understand that who you are when you're 30 is not who you are when you're 40 or 50 or whatever. You constantly grow and you mature and you understand the way society is working differently from what it was before. So it
Mhm.
completely is in line with what you say is that like we can't look at people and expect 100% flawless maturity that they've reached the zenith of maturity and there's no way they can even learn from any mistakes or be more mature than they already are. And that's where I feel like a lot of like the cancel culture stuff, which is another thing. But I always thought like, okay, cancel culture started out as a really noble thing to hold people accountable for their mistakes and their wrongdoing so that they know that they're wrong. What happened was is people saw the amount of attention that you get for being this sort of hero for calling people out. So now they're nitpicking and looking for any little thing that they can find so they themselves can be the hero and be like, look, I brought attention to this bad person doing these bad things. And it's lost the whole concept.
I mean, I think, and we talked about like wisdom that got dropped, and I'll also echo this too. Paul Heyman, Hall of Fame speech. The only person that can ever truly cancel you is you.
Yeah.
You're the person that decides to stop putting yourself on platforms, taking yourself out of the public eye, being an object subject to ridicule, and having people saying mean and nasty things about you. And I mean, a lot of times they're warranted if you do something fucking dumb.
Yeah.
Like that's the whole reason but again, like the cancel culture is the whole you've done something fucking dumb. We'll sweep you under the rug and pretend you never existed versus people that actually give a fuck about social connections. You've done something stupid. Let's help you understand what you've done so you can actually move on into a better place, right? And again, that's the whole thing at the end of the day, right? I am more in favor of helping someone try to be better rather than just saying fuck this person, get them out of my life, never want to speak to them again. I think like just to try to do that and just completely like cancel out connections that you have in life is a dumb fucking thing because life has a funny way of bringing people back into your life when you
Mm.
do that. And then the next thing you know is that you're going to have to think back about what happened. Was it really that bad? And what came from it, right? Did you actually learn from the lesson that life was teaching you at that point? And did this person even learn from the lesson of actually interacting with you? Maybe they didn't. Maybe they're still doing the same stupid things. But life's very short. Don't hold hate in your heart. Forgiveness is something that can always be given to people, except if you do something outrageous and incredibly egregious and stupid. I mean, again, that's where you have to see if a person is going to learn to be better or if they're going to stay the same, and that's when you have to take the decision to walk away. But you yourself, if you actually learn from your mistakes and you try to be a better person moving forward, then a lot of people will see that, they'll know that, and then you'll get back really what you're looking for, which is, again, social connection at the end of the day. But social connections at JDK Nonstop. You can hit me up on all platforms. Otherwise than that, twitch.tv/Keeley's Network. That's where you can find me. Again, I'm live usually 5-6 days a week, like I was saying. And again, you can find me on Spotify. I got a couple tracks on there as well too. Apple Music, Google Play. From when I was doing the music, I'm just as bad as Dr. Dre was, but Tupac was always in conversations, brother. Like that, there, I've probably released like maybe a third of the music that I've made, and it's just because I just never thought it was really good enough to continue working on, or I got too in my head about working on things. Like, I could go on talking about this for all days, right? But the biggest advice I could give to a creator, somebody that's making something, is push through, make something, release it, put it out there.
Hmm.
If it's something great enough, you can always polish it. You can always re-release, remaster, re-edit. You can always kind of re-envision it and then have it come out in a bigger, grander fashion. But if it's something that you are secreting and you're holding on to, do the work so you can finally get to a point where it's released. Otherwise, you'll come up with a bunch of unfinished stuff like I have.
Well,
So.
well, like you said, it doesn't hurt. You can always go back to it, and hopefully with this episode, people are going to be interested and they're going to want to hear it. So you might have to get back to work, buddy.
We'll see. I mean, I worked on an album when I was when COVID was, like I mentioned, like when I fell out of the love of doing music and stuff like that, which is still about like five or six tracks that I produced beats for. I wrote, and I never thought my music was that great, but I've always had a lot of people saying, "When are you going to put this stuff out?" Right? And I got to give a lot of shout outs to the people in my life that have been following me since I was doing music and continue to follow me into doing live streaming, because that, at the end of the day, people are there to support you, not necessarily the thing that you do. And that's always a big important thing to remind yourself of.
Yeah, that's very true, because I with the wrestling, I get just as many wrestling fans as non-wrestling fans,
Mm-hmm.
that are just like, "Oh, he's a streamer, I'm a streamer," like you said earlier. And a lot of times they're like, "Well, he's actually making this shit sound cool." So like maybe, it's something I've converted many of people who weren't wrestling fans that are now kind of in the thick of it and loving it. So that's the cool part of my job. And another cool part is randomly meeting you, becoming your 1,000th follower on Twitch, and now we're collabing on the very first episode of this brand new podcast.
Yeah, man.
Probably podcast number 6 or 7 in my career since I started in 2013. And I really, really am enjoying this, and I had a lot of fun chatting with you, and just
Likewise, man.
learn
Thank you so much.
learning about life. I felt like this was a learning about life episode.
Well, I mean, and like we mentioned it just before we started recording and stuff, like this is the first time that you and I have actually like had like a video call, an actual chat,
Yeah,
get to know one another in a deeper rooted connection, versus just like me talking to you in your chat, you talking to me in my chat, and then like seeing the growth and how time moves on, right?
yeah,
Like social connection at the end of the day is the biggest thing about live streaming, not just content creation, right?
yeah,
And being able to form those connections, and even more importantly, renewing people's love for professional wrestling.
yeah.
That's what gets me going at the end of the fucking day, because I got the Money in the Bank briefcase behind me from a SmackDown show that I went to with my one homie years ago. I got an old foam finger Rey Mysterio. I'll show this real quick.
By the way,
I still got this shit from one of my first wrestling shows that I went to when
wow,
I was a
look at
kid,
that.
way back in the day,
Look at that.
right? And like there's definitely been points in my life where like I stopped actually like liking something to the point where I was just like, oh, I should just like throw this out. I should go sell this. But like I've never really done that with my wrestling memorabilia, because like I just have such a deep rooted love for it,
That's
right?
awesome. That's awesome.
So
Yeah, I'm really appreciative of you taking the time out of your night to do this with me. Hopefully, you got something out of it, and hopefully, other people that are watching this can check it out. Again, check them out on Twitch, twitch.tv/Keeley's Network. That is KEELYS Network. Go check him out on Twitch. Throw him a follow. It is you're gonna get a whole bunch of different stuff, not just wrestling. You're gonna get some IRL content. When he goes to different conventions, and like I said, he's done some music stuff, which hopefully he gets back into because I think he should. I think he should spread himself even thinner and get back into making some banger ass music that maybe we can
I mean,
use.
I've been thinking about it for a while. I mean, the one thing that I'll let you know and people listening to this is that if you ever catch me doing my streams and this mic is actually not what I'm using and I'm just using this mic and you're like, "Where's your pro mic?" Well, I wonder where my pro mic is set up and what I'm using it
Yeah,
for.
there you go. There you go. So I have a feeling we're gonna hear something new coming from JDK Nonstop in the near future. But again,
Yeah.
I'm gonna wrap this up with him offline. Again, JDK, thank you for taking the time out of your night to do this with me.
Yeah.
And we are definitely going to down the road, maybe episode 100, we'll revisit and do a part two with JDK Nonstop. How does that sound?
I'm looking forward to it. Definitely, what I was thinking too is one of those nights reacting to Raw or SmackDown.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's link up in a Discord call, do that shared chat shit, and actually like both us do our own kind of commentary while watching the shit.
I would
Right? So
love that. That would sound fucking awesome. We should definitely
yeah,
set that up soon.
holler, man. You know you can use that knock feature on Twitch.
Yeah,
Come knock
yeah.
on my door.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you guys for
Yeah.
watching this video. It's very much appreciated. Make sure you check me out, twitch.tv/ringside rundown. Check them out, twitch.tv/Keely's Network. And we shall see you on the next episode of Clash of Creators. Take care.
Peace.